Members of the Committee for Petitions, other members of Parliament, support staff, TV viewers, radio listeners, all following this meeting via social media, members of the media, those in the tribune, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I welcome you to this meeting of the Parliamentary Committee for Petitions. This is Committee for Petitions meeting number 5 for today, Tuesday, April 15th, 2025. At this time, I want to give a special welcome to the following persons who are here with us. We have Mr. Houtsma, we have Mr. Lapin, we have Mr. Wittefeen, and we have Mr. Dahl. Gentlemen, welcome. We have established a quorum of 4 members. I invite you to stand for a reflective moment of silence. Thank you. I look to my left and I asked if there are any notifications that we received beforehand from members of Parliament. No notifications of absence received beforehand, none of lateness. I asked if there are any notifications to be made from the floor of Parliament. That does not appear to be necessary at this time. So we continue with the agenda point for this committee meeting, namely a discussion with the submitters of the petition, a petition. And this petition has been labeled / titled by the petitioners as a call for not permitting our economy and community to get weakened, but to strengthen it, and other stakeholders. This document here at Parliament is document number IS 244-244 of the parliamentary year 24-25. It is dated November the 5th of 2024, and we also received another letter, and that was dated February the 26th of this year, and that is IS 649. Parliament received a letter from Windward Roads, BV, and Lecom, NV, on behalf of various contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, consultants, and architects of St. Martin, addressing the critical issue of public funds use in contracting. And attached to that document, by the way, which was dated July 15th of 2024, attached was a document titled Petition. We must build and strengthen the local St. Martin economy with the IRMA recovery funds, not weaken it. That document is document number 929 of the year, parliamentary year 23-24. And as I mentioned earlier, we also received a reminder in November of 2024, and that's the IS 244. The letter outlines the collective concerns of the petitioners and contained a detailed account of the situation experienced by the companies that have affixed their signatures to the document. The primary objective, as outlined in the cover letter to the petition, is to bring attention to the issue, namely the use of public funds in contracting. The petitions in their petition are actually calling on the Parliament of St. Martin to ensure that the contracting authorities proceed with a procurement process that promotes fair competition, represents the St. Martin standards and conditions, and is based on favoring contractors that work with locally based companies. And if necessary, it continues, be strict about not permitting any work method that will not fit into the local community. I refer you to point B of the letter in question. I also want to note that the documents were signed by approximately 73 concerned businesses. It is important to note that a closed-door committee meeting was held on February the 3rd of this year regarding the documents cited before, whereby, in keeping with Article 68 of the Constitution of St. Martin, Article 25 of the Parliamentary Rules of Order, and the regulations on the handling of petitions as approved in April of 2015, this committee established in that closed-door meeting that a document submitted did meet the requirements for a petition that could be investigated by the Committee for Petitions of Parliament. I care to remind all that the Committee for Petitions is a very special committee of the Parliament because it finds its grounds in the Constitution of St. Martin. The submitters, Windward Roads BV and Lecom NV, were duly updated of this decision by registered letter on the UV 158 dated February the 6th, 2025. We also, on February the 26th, received a letter from Waste Solutions. This is the document 649, dated February the 26th of 2025, outlining the shared concern of several fellow local entrepreneurs regarding the lack of opportunity for St. Martin businesses in government and government-owned companies' projects, including projects managed by the National Recovery Program Bureau. Considering the request for a meeting submitted by Waste Solutions and the decision of this committee to investigate the petition registered under the IS 244 pertaining to the same subject matter, the submitters, also of Waste Solutions, have been invited for a meeting at Parliament here today. Ladies and gentlemen, hence this meeting of today, just to explain those who are here with us today and the relevant documentation which can be found in the Parliament's administration of all of the registered letters, petitions, signature drives, etc. As I mentioned, all members of the committee, in fact, all members of Parliament have access to the documents cited on Teams. So with that introduction one to the letters we have received from all concerned, as well as to the position of the Committee for Petitions of Parliament, I now look to the gentleman to my right, and I ask who is going to take the floor as the first speaker. I believe it is you, Mr. Witteveen, that's right. So I invite, first of all, gentlemen, I once again officially welcome you to this committee meeting of Parliament, the Committee for Petitions, and then I give the floor to Mr. Witteveen to make a presentation, an opening statement on the letters to which I have referred in my introduction. So, Mr. Witteveen, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for your introduction. Honourable members of Parliament, distinguished members of the Committee for Petitions, we thank you for granting us the opportunity to speak today. We come before you not to lay blame, but to seek understanding and propose a constructive path forward. We represent a coalition of local heavy equipment operators, contractors, consultants, and architects who are deeply invested in the recovery and the development of St. Martin. And I'd like to give the word to Leroy Le Pen, who will continue from here on.
Thank you, Mr. Witteveen, for that introduction to the topic at hand, and Mr. Le Pen will now continue with his presentation.
Good morning. We recognize the crucial role of the World Bank and the National Recovery Bureau have played in advancing our national building efforts. The pace and quality of the implementation have been commended both locally and internationally, and rightly so. However, we have also experienced challenges that we believe can be addressed for betterment of all. The current procurement procedures, while grounded in the best intentions and goals standards, have often placed local professionals at a disadvantage, limiting our ability to meaningfully participate in the very building of our island. Today, we will share our experiences and offer suggestions on how to strengthen local inclusion in these important efforts. We approach this discussion in good faith, with respect for all parties involved and with a firm belief that St. Martin grows stronger when her own people are part of the work. To understand our present concern, it is essential to reflect on the journey that has brought us here. In the aftermath of Hurricane Irma devastation in September of 2017, the government of the Netherlands committed 470 million euros, approximately $553 million, to establish the St. Martin Recovery, Reconstruction, and Resilient Trust Fund. This fund is managed by the World Bank in collaboration with the government of St. Martin and the government of the Netherlands. To carry out the projects financed by the trust fund, the National Recovery Program Bureau, the NRPB, was created in January of 2019 as an independent administrative body under the responsibility of the Minister of General Affairs. Its mission is to prepare, implement, and monitor recovery projects aimed at rebuilding infrastructures, strengthening economic resilience, and preparing St. Martin for future disasters. Importantly, the strategic framework 2019-2025, the guidance document for the trust fund, acknowledges the critical role of the local involvement. It mentions the need to increase local capacity, and it implicitly states local labor will be leveraged to the greatest possible extent, also within the framework of the World Bank procurement regulations. This fundamental principle underlines our belief that local businesses, contractors, and professionals are not just beneficiaries, but vital partners in our national recovery. Our aim is to ensure that this principle is fully realized in practice. At the initial tender of 2019-2020, which had mixed results and served as a learning curve for all parties, including the NRPB, we observe a shift in approach. In the period between 2020 and 2023, the construction tender began to group multiple works into a single package. For example, combining numerous schools, shelters, or homes. This bundling significantly raised the financial requirements, making it impossible for small local contractors to qualify. It's often said that local contractors should collaborate to meet their thresholds, but such partnerships carry considerable risk. Joint ventures require mutual financial exposure, shared liability, and complete transparency. It is unrealistic to expect two small businesses to open their books to one another and accept full joint responsibility for a multi-million-dollar project. It should also not be underestimated that it costs a considerable amount of time and money to put together a bid according to the World Bank requirements. While high-quality standards are understandable, the financial barrier could have been mitigated. For instance, a tender for the renovation of 11 schools could have been divided, allowing smaller contractors to compete for a portion of the work. The supervising consultant could then ensure health, safety, and environmental compliance. This would have fostered both capacity building and meaningful participation, allowing smaller firms to build a creditable portfolio, something is vital for eligibility in further tenders. But things were about to get worse. From 2023 onwards, we saw financial requirements push even higher, so high, in fact, that even the larger contractors struggled to qualify. It seemed the project were deliberately designed to attract large foreign firms. The consequences have been cleared. A mainland Chinese firm has won back-to-back contracts for major public works. The renovation of 12 sports facilities, the expansion of the fire and ambulance building, renovation of 13 school gyms, reconstruction of the Sister Marie Laurent School, including demolition of the Charles Leopold Bell School and the St. Martin Library. Even in these cases, work could have been divided. You're telling me that 13 school gyms couldn't be divided, 12 sports facilities couldn't be divided. The building and demolition of the Sister Marie Laurent School, including the demolition of the Charles Leopold Bell School and the demolition of the St. Martin Library, couldn't be separate projects? How does it even make sense to bundle them together? Government agencies such as GB and VROMI frequently break up projects to support local micro enterprises why not apply the same principle here? We believe the NRPB's strong team and extensive consultancy support has the capacity to manage projects in a way that includes more of the small local contractors sector. The World Bank itself has decades of experience promoting inclusive developments. We are especially concerned about the long-term impact of foreign firms operating with low-cost labor, cheaper equipment, and direct access to bulk materials. The cost of living in St. Martin is high, flooding the market with artificially low prices from abroad, risking undercutting and eventually destroying our local construction industry. This is not a hypothetical concern. Even in the Netherlands, Prime Minister Dick Schoof has warned about long-term risks of over-reliance on cheap foreign Chinese goods. What may appear cost-effective at first can ultimately undermine domestic resilience. This is why such a broad alliance of St. Martin contractors, consultants, architects, and suppliers signed a petition out of concern that our recovery process, rather than building resilience and local capacity, may inadvertently create dependency, and that we believe was not the intent of this trust fund. With that, I will now hand over to Hans Houtsman from Licon, representing St. Martin General Contractors.
Thank you, Leroy. Thank you, Leroy, Chair and Parliament members. Licom and Wimmet Roads has proudly participated in several NRPB tenders from 2019-2020 through 2023-24. Successfully delivered multiple projects. We welcome the World Bank standards as an opportunity to elevate our operations and build a portfolio that would allow us to compete regionally. The experience benefited not only our company, but also the network of subcontractors and tradespeople we employed for those projects. By raising the bar, as Mr. Leroy explained, only Licom and Wimmet Roads were the two companies who were able to work for NRPB. What has been realized by those two companies is a 12 shelters project by Wimmet Roads, 3 schools by Wimmet Roads, 101 homes by Licom, 64 apartments in Belvedere by Licom, the repair of 3 schools and the fire ambulance building by Wimmet Roads, the GB Phase 1 by Wimmet Roads, the repair of Home 3 project, 18 units by Licom, and the repair, the last one, the repair of 13 schools by Licom. These projects were completed without major cost overruns and major delays. So we were surprised when, despite these successes, the requirements for the tenders 23-24 were raised dramatically. You have to know that participating by the above-mentioned projects, the contractor needed to have a cash flow or credit line of $800,000, need to submit 10% of as a performance bond of the total contract sum. For example, a $10 million contract means a $1 million performance bond and a $1 million advance payment bond. All those bonds and credit line, we need to go to a bank to get those credit lines, and we need to put a lot of collateral opposite to that before we get even close to these funds. By raising that bar with the last project, namely the Marie-Laurent School and the demolition of 3 other projects, raising the bar to a credit line of $1.4 million, that was even for Licom and Windward Roads a step too high. So we were not able to participate in that bidding of that project. Perhaps because of some issues in projects from 2022 to 2023 may be the reason. Therefore is of course a learning curve for contractors to deal with the World Bank requirements. We can make mistakes. We are not perfect. And the same apply for NRPB. You would think that this is a part of the process of increasing capacity. Raising the bar was especially confusing because during the same time the Trust Fund and NRPB were being praised as model for the region. Even Suriname was looking to NRPB as an example. If our local consultants, contractors had delivered so much already, why the need to raise the bar again? The frustration is compounded by the fact that newer tenders involve or will involve new builds, a critical type of experience for contractors seeking to grow their portfolios and compete internationally. We also understand that recent bids by local firms were deemed too expensive compared to estimates. But if the requirements are higher, more reports, shorter timelines to start, more liability, it's only natural that costs rise. Previous tenders had at times 3 to 5 local participants. The latest ones had only 2.
Mr. Houtsman, if I could just interject one moment and ask you to pull the mic a little closer to you. Yes.
Okay. The latest ones, the biddings had only 2 participants. That only should say something. Another issue is timing, which also has an impact on cost. Tender specified expected construction periods, which must be factored into bids. Local firms maintain officers, trained staff on island to meet such expectations, and the bids are based on the pre-bid. Foreign firms rely on importing labours. Something NRPB has committed to assisting within its own terms of reference. That includes helping with work permits and even securing exemptions. That is of course strange if you read the agreement between the Netherlands, Sint Maarten and the World Bank, that the target was to involve as much as possible local people and local companies as an added value to disperse those funds to the island. We now understand that several projects has already missed the intended start date due to what we understand is permitting delays. By awarding the contract to a foreign company that underestimate the complexity of the local labor requirements, NRPB has put both the projects and itself in a difficult position. The foreign firms' failure to comply with the required timelines places the projects at risk, and theory should warrant removal from the project. Now, that has then happened since yesterday. The project Marie-Laurence and the demolition of the 3 schools, of which is already a strange combination, in my opinion. That contractor has been removed from the project. But that same contractor is also still involved with the renovation of 13 gyms, with 13 playgrounds, most probably also with the extension of the fire and ambulance building. And as we see that progress, for example, by the 13 gyms of the schools, that is also about to fail. If World Bank rules are to be respected, then the rule about timely start and contract enforcement should apply just as firmly. Delays due to foreign labor permits are a known risk and should not be grounds for special allowances. If we as local companies start too late, then we also get hit with all kinds of fines and financial consequences. In contrast, local firms who understand the bureaucracy and plan accordingly are penalized. If this continues, it could lead to a market where foreign firms dominate and local capacity withers. Exactly the opposite of what this recovery was meant to achieve. With that, I will now hand over to Yuri Dahl from ICE, representing the St. Martin Consultants and Architects.
Thank you, Mr. Houtsman. And I now pass, as you requested, the floor to Mr. Dahl. Mr. Dahl, you make your presentation or your statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Hans. Good morning, honorable members of Parliament. I sincerely thank you for this opportunity to speak today. I would like to start that before the meeting yesterday, we sent a document, or the day before yesterday, summary annexes that points out some important documents we are referring to. And in this presentation that we're making, sometimes we are referring back to these documents. So you can look it up yourselves if you need to. When the World Bank and NRPB began implementing projects in St. Martin, our firm, that's ICE, saw this as a significant opportunity to expand our capacity and gain the experience necessary to compete regionally. We invested considerable time and resources to meet the requirements, and we're grateful for the opportunities we received. Between 2022 and 2020 until now, our company and our network of sub-consultants who are engaged in numerous projects for the NRPB, including renovation of schools, shelters, gyms, apartment building, expansion of the fire and ambulance building, and currently the renovation of the Phillipsburg police station. These opportunities, especially in emergency repair and reconstruction projects, allowed us to demonstrate our capacity. However, many of these were made accessible to local firms like ours precisely because of their urgency. And while the timelines were demanding, the eligibility requirements were more flexible compared to the anticipated less urgent projects. We were aware that higher requirements could be expected over time for future projects, and we prepared for this by investing in our people, recruiting talent, and engaging with potential local and regional partners. So when the new tenders began rolling out 2023 and 2024, we thought we would be ready. We were mistaken. What stood out with these tenders, which included a library, 2 schools, sewage network expansion, and mental health facility, was not just the increased complexity of the tenders, it was a noticeable amount of foreign participants and little to no local participants. This is notable given the local architectural firms have consistently demonstrated strong interest in bidding for new public building projects in the past. For example, around 2019, there was a design process that was initiated by an independent group to advise the St. Martin government regarding the new library, which would include museum and archaeological department. 6 local architects participated, and a few even completed conceptual designs, which they did for free. In Annex 8, you'll be able to see some of these designs. These designs were presented to the NRPB. Now, For whatever reason, this project didn't continue in that phase, and instead NRPB held a tender for the design and construction supervision for the library in combination with the new Charles Leopold Bell School. Although the NRPB did publish the tenders publicly, almost all local architects were unaware of the opportunity and were disappointed to have missed the chance to participate. This is especially concerning given that many of these architects had previously engaged with NRPB and were clearly known to the organization. After the limited local participation in the first design tender for the school and library, one might have anticipated that additional steps would be taken to ensure broader local awareness in future tenders, such as the one for the mental health facility. NRPB has, in other cases such as appraisals, directly reached out to local firms. A similar courtesy in this instance could have made a meaningful difference. Meanwhile, foreign firms had no trouble finding the tender, and it's difficult to believe that firms an ocean away were independently monitoring procurement platforms for opportunities in St. Martin without any prior indication or encouragement. If the intention is to promote local inclusion, then we believe that an extra effort should be made to ensure local firms are aware of tenders that they can participate in. A simple notification to known local professionals would have required little effort and would have gone a long way in supporting the stated goal of local capacity building. However, upon reviewing the tender documents, it became understandable why there may not have been broader outreach. The requirements were set at a very high threshold, and it's possible that there was an assumption that local architects might face challenges in meeting them. Still, they should have been given a shot. I'll give you an example. For the design of the Charles Leopold Bell School and a new library, IC was planning to place a bid in collaboration with multiple firms. However, our group couldn't pass the pre-qualification stage. The reason? We don't meet the following requirement. At least 3 successfully completed contracts during the last 7 years for detailed design, architectural works, and the supervision of construction of concrete buildings for public use projects such as schools, hospitals, community centers, hotels, and similar facilities with a construction value of at least $5 million each. If you look at this requirement strictly, it'd be very difficult for a local firm on St. Martin to meet this threshold. Not because of lack of expertise, but because since 2017, our market has been focused entirely on post-Irma reconstruction. There simply haven't been a significant amount of new public buildings of that scale built on the island in that time period. Let's all remember that before 2017, St. Martin contractors and designers built numerous schools that were significantly larger than the proposed project. It's hard to believe that all of a sudden locals aren't capable to execute a project like this. You could see the contract award in Annex 4 for that project. When we informed about the high requirements such as these, we've been told these requirements are determined by World Bank rules and there's not much NRPB or the St. Martin government can do about it. But these requirements are ultimately human decisions, open to interpretation of the rules and certainly not carved in stone. Instead of a requirement of 3 projects of $5 million, why not 2 projects of $3 million? Where do these numbers actually come from? Someone decided on this. A possible idea would have been to perhaps lower this threshold for the school and library project by simply splitting it in 2 projects instead of 1, which actually looks to be more logical considering the distance from each other and the completely different functions that they have. You could split it even further by putting design contracts separate from the quality control during construction. Then you have 4 separate projects. I mean, right now, we all see the recent news in the newspaper about the Marie-Laurent School having to retender. Now they're capable to split it up. Why not before? Some would argue that bundling projects together is more efficient. Well, have you know that the World Bank promotes a fit-for-purpose procurement strategy, one that adapts to the size, risk, and capacity of the market. In St. Martin, bundling projects into oversized contracts would exclude capable local firms, not because of quality, but because of scale. The decision to bundle projects like this is not fit for purpose. It was misaligned with both the market realities and the Trust Fund's own strategic goals of building local capacity and resilience. Regarding cost efficiency, we should take into consideration the real cost when contracting a foreign firm. Time delays, say for permits, overhead, flights and hotel, missed economic benefits, taxes that local companies pay, and exclusion of capable local firms. When projects are too large for local firms to qualify, they don't bid. That means fewer bidders and less price competition. I think in Annex 5 and 6, you would see the difference between when the requirements went higher and what happened when you put the when the requirements lower. Less people participate when the requirements were higher. When projects are too large for local firms to qualify, they don't bid. Yeah, I've said that part before. Smaller tenders encourage more local participation and competitive pricing. Breaking down projects doesn't just make them affordable to locals, it makes them fit for purpose, as the World Bank itself requires. I would like to go back to what is written in the strategic framework. In Annex 1, I refer to this quote, local labor, and it's also mentioned by both Hans and Leroy, local labor will be leveraged to the greatest possible extent, also within the framework of World Bank procurement regulations. If that's our guiding principle, then we must examine whether current practices truly reflect that mandate. In the World Bank's procurement regulations for IPF borrowers, it is explained that points are awarded during evaluation for technical and financial merit. For the technical scoring for consultants, there is a table that shows the possible points per section that can be allocated. You can see this back in Annex 3. It mentions methodology, 20 to 50 points, relevant experience and qualification of key staff, 30 to 60 points, relevant experience of firm, 0 to 10 points. And here are the important points that I wanted to draw attention to. Nationals among key personnel, 0 to 10 points. Transfer of knowledge, 0 to 10 points. That has to do with transferring knowledge from the professional foreign consultant over to the local stakeholder or the key or non-key personnel. If the goal is to build local capacity and make use of national expertise, then the evaluation criteria should support that. This means awarding as many points as possible for including nationals and for transferring knowledge. However, across several consultancy tenders issued under the recovery program 2023-2024, we've observed a concerning pattern. Many offered no or limited points for national participation. Regarding points for transfer of knowledge, we haven't seen any consultancy tender that awards points for this. I'm not saying this doesn't exist in other World Bank projects, but for consultancy, I haven't seen it. How can we claim that we are leveraging local labor to the greatest extent when key evaluation criteria consistently award 0 points for using national and transfer of knowledge? Everyone in this island knows the complexities of legally operating a business here when you work with foreign workers, from obtaining business license, director's license, labor permits, and residency documentation. On top of that, while that's going on, the foreign applicant is not even allowed to be on the island. These steps can take months, and in most cases, foreign firms underestimate these hurdles, which can lead to avoidable delays on critical projects. Allocating more points for nationals in their evaluation process would directly support the success of these projects. Even if local firms do not always meet the full qualification criteria alone, foreign firms would be more inclined to include local professionals in key roles to strengthen their proposals and earn valuable evaluation points. This approach benefits everyone, foreign firms, NRPB, local companies, and the project themselves. It helps reduce paperwork and delays caused by immigration and permit issues. It also supports local economy, since local firms already have offices on the island and employ support staff. This means more tax revenue and jobs stay within the country. Assigning greater value to local participation through clear and meaningful evaluation points is not just about inclusion. It's about promoting readiness, reducing operational risk, and ensuring smoother project delivery. I hope that today's discussion will help illustrate the need for more inclusion and locally grounded approach, one that goes beyond simply meeting procedural requirements and instead upholds the original spirit of the intent of the Trust Fund, to rebuild St. Martin with the active participation of its own people. Thank you for your attention. I return the floor to Mr. Leroy Lepage for the closing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. And Mr. Lepage, you may now make the closing remarks on behalf of the delegation.
Honorable members of Parliament, you've now heard from those directly affected, those who have invested their time, equipment, expertise, and livelihood in rebuilding this country We do not come here today in opposition of the National Recovery Program Bureau or the World Bank. We come as willing partners in the St. Martin recovery, partners who are asking for a fair chance to contribute. We acknowledge the importance of high standard transparency and accountability in public procurement, but standards should not be confused with barriers. When requirements are set so high that local businesses who have already proven themselves are shut out, we risk replacing recovery with dependency. That is not resilience. But failing to involve local professionals in a meaningful capacity in these once-in-a-generation projects, St. Martin is missing a critical opportunity for long-term economic and professional development. The reliance on foreign firms, many of which import workers from countries with significantly lower labor costs, further distorts the local job market, making it even more difficult for local firms and professionals to compete. This trend has far-reaching consequences. St. Martin students, many of whom pursue higher education abroad, hold Dutch passport in St. Martin. In St. Martin, they may have to compete with foreign firms benefiting from cheaper labor markets. These students can easily remain in the Netherlands, where they are assured fair wages and do not face such disadvantages. If these tendering policies continue to sideline local professionals, they will only accelerate the brain drain, pushing more St. Martin's best and brightest to build their futures elsewhere. Can we seriously expect our young professionals to return home after their studies when they see foreign firms rather than local talent repairing school gyms, constructing new schools, and building our national library? What message does this send about the value we place on our own people? If we do not create opportunities for our local workforce now, we cannot be surprised when our children choose not to return. This is why we are asking you, the Parliament of St. Martin, to use your voice and your influence. We respectfully call on you to urge the government to conduct a review of how current tendering structures impact local participation, encourage the NRPB to explore more inclusive procurement approaches, such as breaking up large projects into smaller lots, creating learning opportunity for local firms, and reconsidering how financial thresholds are defined. Request that principles of strategic framework 2019-2025, including commitment to local labor and capacity building, be more deliberately and transparently applied in future tenders. And finally, to keep this issue on the public and legislative agenda so that the goal of resilience does not lose sight of the people it was meant to serve. We are not asking for favoritism. We are asking for fairness, for opportunity, for a system that acknowledges that rebuilding a country is not only about erecting new buildings, it is about investing in the next generation. If local firms are not given a fair shot at participating in these milestone projects, St. Martin will continue to undermine its own future, losing both economic independence and homegrown expertise in the process. Let's ensure that our country's progress includes rather than excludes the very people who call it home. Let us make St. Martin recovery truly St. Martin's. Before we conclude, we would like to acknowledge the important update shared by the NRPB yesterday regarding the Sister Marie Laurence project. The decision to relaunch the demolition phase separately from the full construction contract is, in our view, a very positive step. It is confirmed the concern we raised that overly bundled tender can lead to mobilization delays, especially for foreign firms navigating complex administrative requirements. It is also reinforced our proposal to break projects in smaller lots to enable timely delivery and broader local participation. We thank the NRPB for its willingness to adapt and sincerely hope this signals a more inclusive and pragmatic procurement approach going forward. We encourage that this approach of unbundling projects, where it's feasible, be adopted as a standard practice in future tenders to avoid similar issues and ensure smoother execution. Thank you.
Mr. Lapé, thank you very much for those closing remarks. To all you gentlemen, thank you for your contribution to this discussion and the explanation on the petition which you have filed with Parliament. Members of Parliament, of course, now you have the opportunity. We have committee members and we also have other members of Parliament here present in this meeting today. I recognize the request by MP De Wever to speak at this time, and I give the floor to MP De Wever. MP De Wever, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Good morning to you, my colleagues, and our visitors here today. Thank you very much for a thorough explanation, actually, of some of the challenges being faced by the contractors. And in the beginning, when when we saw the article or the description of this meeting, which is a Committee of Petitions meeting, at first I didn't get it because the description referred to a call for not permitting our economy and community to get weakened, but to strengthen it and other stakeholders. And at first you're like, well, what is the link with the contractors? But when you look at the role of the World Bank, which is to reduce poverty, as they clearly state, to improve economies, to improve the standard of living of the people of wherever their projects are happening, the explanation that you just gave us is actually contradictory to that. If you are excluding local contractors from being able to participate in a regular way of life of just building, because you're doing these conditions that excludes you all, which you've clearly explained to us. And I thank you for bringing up the press release that came from the NRPB yesterday. So for those that haven't reviewed it as yet, if you go to the NRPB website in their press releases, you will see exactly the announcement made of mobilization challenges, which you all have explained. Because if we are relying on a foreign company who won a bid to come in, we have to think of all of those delays that would happen with making sure that they could legally work here, making sure that they fit the requirements of our labor department, so whether they're receiving a work permit, and we all know the challenges that we have when we're waiting to actually invite persons that need special visa requirements and special permit requirements to actually exist here. And I'm stating this for the fact of, from our position here, or especially my position here in Parliament, we are gathering information from one side. Doesn't mean that it's one-sided from one side to continue this conversation later on down the line, whether that is directly with the Council of Ministers, who is the one responsible for these projects from the NRPB, as opposed to NRPB coming in here. That's where I expect my further inquiry to go, is with the government side of things. And what I wanted to find out, though, is you briefly touched upon it, and this is for anyone that's here visiting us today, where you feel this sort of pressure to combine in order to compete with larger companies. And one of the issues that I've had in the past when we're dealing with big organizations that have all good intentions, whether we're talking about the IMF, whether we're talking about the World Bank. It's not to say that they're not doing good work. It's just that sometimes they take this template that they cannot apply to smaller societies or smaller countries or smaller economies, which is exactly where we are today. And I'm pretty sure if the former Minister of Finance was here, he would know how I was always challenging a lot of things with he's in the back, sorry, there. I see you. I see you. I didn't see you there because I could only see from the corner of my eye. Because I always challenge the fact that you take these cookie cutter projects, templates from big countries, and you apply them here, but you're not taking into consideration our realities. And it's unfortunate that the same thing is happening with a sister organization like the World Bank. And what I want to hear a little bit more of is what you all did to basically object to this. So how, like, you know, and I know it's a very open question. What I mean is, how many times have you all come together in terms of forcing, I don't remember who said it, you're forcing competitors, normal contractors who compete with each other in our community to now come together so that they can become the size of a big company that is basically going to win the bid, because you can do that. But I just want to know, how many times were you guys forced to do that for the projects that were organized or, you know, bidding for NRPB related projects? And if it worked, and if you included it in the documents, my apologies, because I was actually reading the same documents that Yuri referred to here this morning with the annexes, and I only got through half of it. But how far did you go with your complaint? Because this is the first time that you've come to Parliament to explain your issues. And I know that you probably may have had a dialogue already with the Council of Ministers, but how far is that dialogue? Because then it gives me a good starting point of where I go with this after. Whether then we have to invite via the chair lady in this petitions committee or whatever other means that we have available to us, the Council of Ministers or NRPB with them. So I just want to know how far you went with this. I know that I remember reading about a meeting that the contractors had by the Rupert Maynard Center on Pond Island. So we're hearing different things, and you know there have been some articles out there, but did you guys actually have a chance to sit down with a Council of Ministers? That's what I want to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP De Weaver. The next MP to whom I'll give the floor is MP Doran. MP Doran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Good morning to my honorable colleagues, to you, the Griffier, those esteemed guests from the different contracting firms, persons in the Tribune, and a special good morning to the people of St. Martin that are tuned in. Madam Chair, a lot of the concerns that I hear today, it's a bit concerning for me because sitting in the seat as minister, the conversation was different. So one of my main concerns, and I heard it mentioned here, was that these companies, some of these companies have won bids before. So why was the rules of engagement changed during a process? And that is quite confusing because when you talk about setting a credit line of X amount of millions where nobody can qualify, to me it's simple what it is. It's just by design to exclude local participation. And how are you then going to secure transfer of knowledge if you cut out the local participation in order to continue with these projects? St. Martin was not built by any outside firms. We have beautiful buildings right now. So for me, it is quite clear what is taking place here. My main point of discussion will be through you, as MP De Weaver mentioned, to bring NRPB in here, and someone has to be held accountable for what is happening, because it seems to me as if there's a free rein to do as they please. And for me right now, it has reached a breaking point where answers have to be given as to how we're going to move forward. I do have some points I want to bring forth, because indeed I did notice how ironic and coincident a press release came out yesterday on the eve of this meeting where they're talking about disbanding the whole project and busting it up, which had to be done, in my humble opinion, long time ago, because the building permit, if I'm not mistaken, for Marie Laurence, I signed that back in 2022. And they were putting pressure on me to get it done. So I was saying, but okay, you're hurrying me to get a building permit, but demolish it then, no, in the meantime. Which right now the school is still there as a ruin. So a lot of people would say, oh yes, but he was there for 4 years, but 4 years of back and forth discussions with trying to get things done, and it just was not materializing. When I, for instance, was demolishing the old government building, the Soama building, the post office, the library was included in that as well. They said, no, stop, we're gonna do it. They said, stop, we're gonna do it. Up to now, it's still there. And I'm talking about a conversation of 4 years ago. So my point is, Madam Chair, through you to the persons here and the people of St. Martin, something needs to happen. It's clear what is taking place. When I read some of the NRPB documents and the bidding documents under the labor section, it should stipulate that contractors adhere to the labor laws of St. Martin because it's not clear. It's pretty vague. And that's why you can have anyone bidding from wherever the world say where, never even seen the project, won the project, never even had a walkthrough. I don't know how you can win a project without even having a walkthrough or even hiring someone local to even do the walkthrough for you. Now we're talking about an organization that has been executing projects. This is not the first project with top consultants, because right now you only have, I think, one project manager that's local and a pure barrage of international consultants with all kind of expertise, and none of them could have seen that this wouldn't have worked. To now, after going through months and months or maybe years of coming to this point, to now cancel it yesterday on the eve of a meeting here. And now these contractors have to fear now that, hey, you know what, I don't really want to talk too loud because I'm going to be chastised. And I hear each and every one of them saying, you know, this is not a confrontation. I understand. Because at the end of the day, you have to feed your families. But there's nobody there that I don't recognize across from me that has been living here, working here, and contributing to society. So my question is, what is the NRPB seeing that I'm not seeing? Madam Chair, with regards to the project implementation unit, that is a project unit set up to, you know, execute on behalf of government. That is what NRPB is. But in my humble opinion, I've said it before, because I sat here in Parliament in 2018, and we voted for the law to establish the NRPB. So I know all too well how it's supposed to function. And it has never functioned the manner it's supposed to function. It functions as an organization outside of the realms of government, on a silo, and doing exactly what they please. And whenever you try to have some kind of control as government, you're being told that you're overstepping. When they give the payouts for the different individuals in and around the dump and slighted at least 2 of them, I was told that the information is confidential, they can't share it with me. So I say, if you can't share it with me, then who can you share it with? And this is clearly what's happening here today with these same contractors, but in a different subject. So for me, Madam Chair, maybe we need to amend the law for the NRPB to adjust certain things so that they can share and do what they have to do, because it's very clear. They answer to the Prime Minister. So maybe we need to call in the Prime Minister then to see if he's not getting clarity as to why these things are taking place. Because I can foresee that this is going to take a long time to do over a tender. And then my question would be through you, Madam Chair, to the contractors, who was second place then? Because if the first place is being cut off, who was second place? Was a local company second place? Was a local company third place? What is happening here? Because to do an entire tender over again, I don't know how that's going to work. So you're telling me now those children from Marie-Laurence who maybe never seen right now we have people graduated from Marie-Laurence and never see Marie-Laurence because they scatter all over the place. We have the Richardson family that were courteous to us as a country to allow us to use their office space as a library. But here we are, going on 10 years, and now you're going to put it back out again. And then I think, Madam Chair, to be honest with you, this is a whole plot to just extend the NRPB. Because when it comes, I think it's in 2027, it's supposed to come to an end, then it's a way and a mean to just continue to extend. And Madam Chair, I find it quite unfortunate. Let me go through. Madam Chair, I know for a fact, and I would like some clarity if the contractors are familiar with it or no, that in order for you to change this whole thing, what came out yesterday in terms of dividing the project, it's an entire process. You have to go back to the World Bank. You have to go back all these different steps. Me and MP Arian, we went to Washington. We had all these discussions. So I would like to know through you, Madam Chair, from the contractors, what in the procurement documents, or did you, because I heard Mr. Dahl mention that it could have been done a long time ago, but maybe if you have some more information as to how, or maybe if you have the knowledge as to why it was done or how it was done. Of course, you cannot say why, but what are the maybe the loopholes, the small print that could have allowed them to divide this project up before, if you have that information. If not, I will then know where to direct my questions. Madam Chair, I know for a fact that the local influence in the NRPB is very limited, although we have a local at the helm. And for me, I think that a lot needs to change within the organization if we want to get at least a little bit more bang for a buck in the last 2 to 3 years of these projects taking place. Thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to any answers that I can receive from here. And if not, please let me know where to direct. If I need to direct it to the NRPB, then I'll do so in writing. Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Doran. Before we have some other members of Parliament, but I just, from this committee's perspective, wish to share the basis of the committee. And of course, it is based on petition. So what happened before this gentleman was that this committee needed to decide what you presented was actually a petition in line with the petition committee, which it has been determined that it is. And then today you have been asked to come and, for the lack of a better word, defend your petition, which you're doing, and members of Parliament are having the discussion. Because this committee is actually called to investigate the matters as put forward in petitions by citizens of St. Martin as to how government is executing its task. That is what is stated. So based on the information and the questions that we're getting, this is what this committee is called to do. There are two bases for the committee to act, which, as I said, in the event it is decided that government is not handling a particular task the way it is felt that they should. That's one. And on the basis of reports by the Ombudsman. So if you have an investigation done by the Ombudsman and that report is sent to Parliament, this committee is also called to investigate. But those who need to be called to give account to this committee based on petition is the government / the ministers responsible. I just put it out there in terms of what will happen after we're having this discussion here and hearing the questions. So that's just for the sake of information in terms of what we're doing. Why are we asking you these questions? Because this committee then needs to make a decision as to whom we will direct our queries, our concerns, who do we invite as a committee, and it is the government / minister's responsibility to this committee. So having stated that, we continue with the members of Parliament who have asked for the floor, and I see that the next one up would be MP La Cruz. MP La Cruz, I give you the floor.
A blessed morning, Madam Chair Lady. Thank you, SG. Esteemed panelists, a group of construction owners or representatives, those in the tribute, and my fellow colleagues in Parliament, those watching and listening. Madam Chair Lady, through you, I thank the group for bringing this very important topic to Parliament. I have received the documents and the correspondence via since last year. I ranted, I think, about 20 questions to the Prime Minister concerning this exact matter. So we are talking about last year during the budget debate, the CC. The replies that we got were unsatisfactory to myself. I also mentioned that. But I want to start by saying this, because I just got a comment in a message from someone, and I want you to reply to that message, because it is extremely important that people understand the issue that we are having here on St. Martin. It is said that yourselves or the companies that you represent have reaped and benefited for over 30 years on St. Martin because of no competition. And then I will ask you two questions that will answer that and the problem that we are having right now, which is how many locals have you got employed today? Each company. Then my second question is, how many will you have to send home because of lack of work, because of what is taking place today with the NRPB? And at the end of the day, that is the only thing that I care about. I care about whichever company is here employs our own, nothing else. I don't care, and I need to be totally honest about your profit. I care about having fathers working that literally could take care of their kids, their wives, their family members. And in the past years, you have done that. And I'm not asking, I am telling you, because I know and I have family members that have worked for you guys and gotten their paid on time. So that is a question that I'd really like you to answer, because that will definitely open up the eyes of a lot of people that are out there now saying, good that this happening. Then, Madam Chair Lady, through you to the panelists, and I must agree with MP Duran with everything he said, everything. Most of my questions he highlighted properly, even though we did not discuss this before. So I really would like you to elaborate on those answers also. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP La Cruz. I continue with giving the floor to the members of Parliament, and I give the floor to MP Dimar Labega. MP Labega, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning to the Kofi, my fellow colleagues. Good morning to the panelists in front of us that gave us that clear explanation of what's going on. This is a problem that we've been hearing for quite some time now, and it's not new to us. The previous MPs kind of summed it up in a nutshell, not to beat a dead horse, but it's very important to understand that we call in, whether it's the Prime Minister, whether it's the COM, whoever's responsible, the NRPB, to get these answers, because we can so eloquently state what the issues are. We all know what the issues are, but how do we solve the problem? When you hear Mr. Dahl explain some of the prerequisites that's required for companies to get these contracts, $5 million and 3 super projects on a small island like this, where you're going to have the opportunity to build 3 schools, to build a hospital. You know, if it's the intention of the NRPB or the World Bank or whoever it is just not to want to include local workers, then just come out and say that, you know, be upfront. It's kind of reminiscent to the situation we experience with the C positions with our government-owned companies, when you bring in outsiders with a plethora of knowledge, because they've had the opportunity to travel to different countries, state to state, and have big jobs. And when, you know, it comes to the locals, like, oh, well, you haven't had the experience, but where are you going to get the experience if you don't get the chance to build a school, which is still 4 walls, which, like MP Duran said, is beautiful buildings on an island with the same 4 walls. You understand? So it's very important to understand this. Where are you going to get? This is how you get the chance to put this on your resume. So now local locals could now go to other islands and other countries and also participate in some of these big tenders that they're coming to St. Martin to get. You know, so for me, as a committee, I'm not an official member, but I am. I'm not a member, but I'm here, right? How's it go? Yeah? I'm a member, right? But for me, it's important for us to bring in whoever has authority and get these hard answers from them. And that's the only way that we can now give the correct answers to the local contractors. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Labega. I now have MP Veronica Janssen-Webster. MP Janssen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to my colleagues. Good morning to the contractors who are visiting with us today. Welcome, and good morning to the listening public here in the tribunes and at home. I just have a few statements and a question to the contractors via you, Madam Chair. When I was in the managing board of GEBE, I think we foresaw this, the three directors, because in 2018, we fought hard to keep the local contractors for the trenching project. And I know it was a back and forth with the NRPB, but we stuck on that and we fought very, very hard to keep that project local, because an additional aspect to the construction here is that when you have people locally, they know the areas, they know the type of ground that you're dealing with, the type of rocks that you can find, etc. So that was very important. I also want to state that when the Prime Minister visited the Netherlands recently, he stated there the importance of having local contractors. So I think that we do need to call in the Prime Minister to see what is happening with these bids, especially when we hear that they are not being executed in a timely manner because of the permitting, etc. What is going to happen? Because we know his stance on supporting local contractors. So it's interesting for us to know. And then I just had a question. It's quite similar to what what MP La Cruz mentioned, and that is locals often, and we have labor studies that show that locals often don't work in the construction industry. It's no secret. There are at least 3 studies that were done that show that what is needed in the construction industry is not there locally right now. And when we look at the jobs that the unemployed would like to have, construction is not one of them that is top of their list. But what I wanted to ask the contractors is if any of you have any kind of training programs with you in your company, so that, let's say, a young person coming out of school who decides not to further their studies, if they can do a training by your apprenticeship or anything like that in your company. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Janssen-Webster. The next MP is MP De Wever. MP De Wever, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. I was just smiling as MP Janssen-Webster was talking, because she was my boss at GB, and I remember how I reacted actually when World Bank came in, and one of the requirements by World Bank was, in order to take their money, we had to cut 30%. Yeah, 30. Yeah, so 30% of our employees we had to cut. And then, as the business analysis advisor, I said, over my dead body, I don't want their money yet. Let me cut the cost first, which we did. And then later on, when things stabilized in the company, after I left, they did indeed do some projects that went very well with the World Bank. But when you're told to cut 30% of your staff, I don't think they think past their nose, because when you cut 30% of the employees from GB, they're going to become the burden of the government that you're trying to help. So again, it goes back to the contradiction of it. I believe I was trying to, confirm something with MP Duran, with what he said, because I finally got through the whole document, and I saw some examples of the contractors where in the annexes provided, they give an example of a tender that was executed before the bar was significantly raised. and it shows multiple local firms competing for a large project. And I think MP Duran asked that question in terms of why did the conditions or the requirements change? So I just wanted to clarify basically, like in this answer, because now that I've seen all the documents, when receiving the answer, please, if you can be very specific in your response, that it's not a speculation, that it's something that you actually do know, so that we have that information to take back to government, please. And I'm not trying to be offensive, it's just to have, rather than saying, you know, oh, we think it might be this, but it's more of you all are familiar with the requirements of all of the projects, so you know exactly how the requirements and the specifications change. And like you said, before the bar was significantly raised. But for our clarity, then if you can just be very clear in the response to that. So if I could reiterate the question from MP Duran about why the conditions were changed all of a sudden from the beginning when you all could participate as local contractors to then when you were excluded because it was beyond your sort of financial limitation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, MP De Weaver. I continue now, and I give the floor to MP Myers. MP Myers, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair, and a good morning to my colleagues. Good morning to the panelists, radio listeners, those of you watching via social media, and those of you in the Tribune. Madam Chair, this is something that I have met with members of the panelists back in 2024 as it regards the whole World Bank and the procurement from the NRPB. And one of the unfortunate things that happened during this process is the funds that were placed at the World Bank by the Netherlands was not only to help with the reconstruction of after Hurricane Irma, but also with the shot in the arm, if you want to call it that, to the economy. And some of the concerns, the major concerns that the contractors had when we met back in 2024 was the fact that the Chinese company had the ability to underbid by some 40% because of the Chinese government being able to subsidize them directly, which was not the case for the local companies. One of the unfortunate things, and most of my colleagues have mentioned that, is if you are doing nation building isn't just a building. It's being involved in the whole development of not only four walls, but the pride you take in being able to contribute positively to your society. One of the things that is unfortunate, the World Bank's requirements and regulations seems to be quite stringent, but one of the things that I cannot quite put a finger on is that St. Martin, through the NRPB, or the NRPB through St. Martin, did not request a loan from the World Bank. These are monies that were donated from the Netherlands. The Netherlands is the donator for the reconstruction after Hurricane Irma. So these are not World Bank funds that are being borrowed by St. Martin for the reconstruction. But still, they fall under these stringent measures. And to date, I cannot think of a place in this world that the World Bank has gone, whether through a donor or whether through loans, that we can look as a model country and say that this country is better off today because the World Bank was involved in the development of this country. So I think, you know, and interestingly enough, I heard my colleague, MP De Weaver and MP Janssen-Webster state something about GB, because I remember specifically that time when when the World Bank was trying to apply the pressure on GB to lay off those employees, because I was a member of parliament back then. Imagine what that would have done. And then when it was brought to the floor of Parliament, the World Bank publicly denied it and said that that was not the case. So you have to wonder about their sincerity in these matters. I feel the questions that has to be asked, I'm sure that when the Netherlands made this money available, that they did not make the money available that the Chinese could benefit from it, because then it defeats the purpose of the reconstruction. And again, I say reconstruction, but reconstruction just isn't the building of buildings. It's also the amount of times that that money will circulate in your economy. And lastly, one of the things I want to say, to us, we are the representatives of the local people, the local contractors, the local people. Why is it always so hard for us? Why, whenever the opportunities that others seek here in St. Martin that they can get, why is it whenever we are locals, we put things in place to help further and develop this country, but why is it that when we are involved, and when I use the word locals, I mean it in the broadest sense of the word, why is it always so difficult for us? And we could go on and highlight areas in which we find ourselves always, it seems like we're always on the outside looking in as if we're window shoppers. So we see the development, we see persons can speak about how good St. Martin has been to them, and then the question is, how good has St. Martin been to us? We have people, we have companies here, Windward Roads, I see, Lecom, all in which Leroy Lapix, all in which I have had in my professional life dealings with, and in my opinion, are quite capable of executing these projects amongst other local companies that can facilitate. Again, if you want nation building and we want to build some pride, we're going to have to include, our people are going to have to be the piercing tip of that sword that pushes that forward. And I am not a member of this committee, but I thought it was very important that I show up, because this is something that I firmly believe that while I believe, yes, the schools must be built, the library must be built, and these things must be done, it will send a good message as well that it is done by us, for us. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Myers. I continue with the members of Parliament, and I give the floor to MP York. MP York, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to yourself, the griffier, our esteemed guest today, honorable colleagues, and the viewing public. Madam Chair, as some prior speakers said earlier, I'm also not a member of this committee, but seeing that I've been speaking on this topic since 2023, I found it very important to be part of this meeting. Madam Chair, I must say, make sure I word it properly. In watching, prior to entering Parliament, my opinion of it at that point was oftentimes there are topics spoken on in Parliament, and the topic ends up in a vicious cycle of repetition, and sometimes, most times, nothing is done about the topic. I'm a bit shocked by some of the responses today, because one would think that the things said today, that is the first time that it was said. Madam Chair, since entering this room, this hall, actually my first set of contributions in this seat was on this topic. As a matter of fact, in December during the CC, I was quoted in an article stating that contractors who have been involved with the NRPB since inception were blindsided by last-minute changes to the requirements, leaving them unable to meet new requirements. The article, written in December 19 to be exact, continued saying the MP expressed skepticism over how the Chinese company could underbid local contractors by 30 to 50%, despite costs and time of mobilization, housing, equipment, and transport. The math is mathing. That was in a conversation and in a deliberation, actually a debate with the Prime Minister himself, where the Prime Minister continued, stated here in the article, the Prime Minister defended the government's actions and clarified by stating that the contract with the Chinese company has not yet been signed, as the prerequisites such as proof of insurance, environmental studies, and social management plans and scheduling were not yet finalized. The article continues saying York dismissed the explanation as insufficient, questioning the transparency of the bidding process, the rationale for awarding contracts to foreign entities while local contractors struggle to compete, and ended with the following question: are we addressing local contractors' concerns or simply moving forward regardless of the economic impact on St. Martin? Madam Chair, this was on the 19th of December to the Prime Minister in a conversation with the Prime Minister himself. And seeing that the contracts at the time were not yet signed, and since then they've been signed, I think the answer is clear that to the question of are we addressing local contractors' concerns or simply moving forward regardless of economic impact, I think that question has been answered. Now, with the article that was conveniently released yesterday of pulling back the contract based on time frame of mobilization, et cetera, the Madam Chair said herself, upon conclusion of this meeting, and everyone else said as well, saying that we will be bringing back, or hopefully requesting the minister responsible of the NRPB, being the Prime Minister, and maybe even the NRPB themselves, to answer questions that derive from this meeting. But Madam Chair, a lot of these questions has already been asked to the same representatives, being the Prime Minister and the NRPB. As a matter of fact, when the NRPB was here a couple of months ago, I asked them the question, I posed a question at the time stating, asking, hey, why the sudden interest in international companies for bids? And the answer that was given to me at the time by a NRPB representative said the following, being that Windward Roads and Lickham were at full capacity, or constantly on full capacity, and couldn't handle the amount of new projects coming from the NRPB, so they had to look elsewhere. That was the answer given by the NRPB, I think, in October. Just by looking at the representatives of those companies, I can see that that answer was false, right? And actually, I would like to pose that question to Windward Roads and Lickham. Were you over capacity at the time that that question was posed, being October 2024? So seeing that these questions, or most of these questions, are already posed to I would say the representatives of the NRPB and the Prime Minister, I would like to know, and this is maybe a question to the committee, or to the Madam Chair Lady herself, what are we going to be doing differently moving forward? Because are we going to ask the same questions to, as MP Myers, MP Doran, and many have mentioned before me, that we already know the answers to? Moving forward, I still have some questions that I would like to know for my general knowledge going into the meeting, or subsequent meeting, maybe with the Prime Minister or with NRPB themselves. In the annexes, I saw the annex. I think Mr. Dahl can answer that answer that question. Anyone else who has the answer. In one of the annexes, I saw the rated criteria that of which the projects are graded, basically. The one that was in the annex was pertaining to consultancy. Is it the same for construction? If it's not, I would like to know what are the criteria of that, because for the one for consultancy is methodology, experience of staff and qualifications of staff, experience of firm, transfer of knowledge, and nationals amongst staff. So I would like to know, by any one of the good gentlemen, if what is the difference between the one for consultancy and the one for construction. Also, it was made mention that the requirements were raised I think a few of them were mentioned. I would like to know which requirements exactly were raised and what were the requirements before them being raised and what were the requirements prior to them being raised. Also, to ICE, Mr. Dow, I understood for one of the projects, you guys did not meet the qualifications for the pre-qualification stage. I would like to know which requirements were those exactly, and were those changed? If you could, maybe they're in the annexes, but maybe you could let me know which annex exactly that was. Maybe I missed it. Also, transfer of knowledge was one of the criteria for the consultancy. I don't know if it's the same for construction, but what falls exactly under transfer of knowledge? Can that be answered, please? Also, in the rated criteria, I didn't see anything about cost. Is cost included in the criteria for construction? If not, does it fall under methodology or anything? But if the cost is included in the one for construction, what is the grades awarded to it? Because for some of them it's 0 to 10, 0 to 30. What are the grades awarded to cost? And time frame of commencement of projects. I think that's a general rule of thumb. What is the time frame for commencement of a project prior to the contract being signed? So if the contract is signed today, what is the time frame that a firm has to begin construction of a project? Let's see if I miss anything. And yes, once again, to end with what I started with, I would like to know, and seeing the chair lady is the mouth of the committee, what will be done differently? What will the voice of the committee? Let me change my sorry. The voice of the committee. Apologies. What will be done differently moving forward, seeing that majority, if not all of these questions have already been posed to the Prime Minister and the NRPB, and we already have their answers on file, in print. So what will we be doing differently moving forward? Thank you.
Thank you, MP York. I now continue, and I give the floor to MP Irian. MP Irian, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Khifir, colleagues, esteemed guests. I appreciate this dialogue. I think it was definitely needed, and a lot of the questions have already been posed. And something that MP Maya said is that I've also brought my concerns to the NRPB, the trust fund, and even the then state secretary when I said, I don't want at the end of 2028 to hear that the Netherlands has pumped 1 billion guilders into the economy of St. Martin. Right? 'Cause that's what the marketing is going to be like in 2028, 2029, that we have pumped 1 billion guilders into our economy. And I told the then state secretary, I said, listen, we can't, because we could not absorb 1 billion guilders in one shot in 2018, 2019. You have to do over the period of years. But if a majority of the money is going to international companies, we can't say we've absorbed that because we don't feel the effects on a daily basis. The taxes, the hiring of persons, and so forth. So I think it'd be very interesting to see, out of the 1 billion guilders, how much went to consultants. Well, let's look at the total impact of the 1 billion guilders on our economy. And that's a project I think that we have to do via government, NRPB, and prepare ourselves. And what's interesting, because I saw some of the panelists nodding their head during the former MP speaking, because I was also told that the Minister of Finance, when I was there, and when it came to particular projects, it was told, in particular, Women Roads and LECOM cannot take on any more projects that they themselves are not even bidding anymore because they are at capacity. So I said, okay, but then that's a serious problem. If 2 or 3 of the biggest companies on the island cannot handle anymore, then we do have a problem. And then it was recommended by NRPB that, hey, small companies should come together and try to take on bids. Do I see an issue? Actually, I think it's commendable that companies decide to come together to take on bids, because I believe that, especially in business, at the bottom there's competition, And at the top is collaboration when it comes to success. So I think that's commendable. But when I hear things like having previously constructed 3 hospitals on 16 square miles, you're not going to get 3 hospitals, 2 airports, 18 schools. We're never going to meet those requirements. But what's also interesting, on the other side, when there was a particular contractor that did not do what they had to do, Lakeham, Wimber Roads, they stepped in. You guys stepped in and got the job done when it was necessary. And I can say that because I was there. So when we needed you most, because another contractor just couldn't get it done, these are the same companies that stepped in to get the job done. So I do believe that we can get the work done. I've also, in my brief tenure working as Minister of Education, I've also worked with ICE, another project, and I even told my staff at that point in time, I said, hey, we have really good people here on the island that could get a job done. And I even learned stuff, I would say, from Mr. Dahl at that time in terms of accountability and managing the project. And I saw that every email, calling the contractor and making sure that they were hired to basically manage the project. And I was like, we have really good companies here that could get a job done. So I think the next step for us as members of parliament would be to actually get a prime minister in parliament. And as was said before, this is not, this is money from the Dutch taxpayers. So the person that makes the decision would then be the state secretary. That's basically the only person that has the ultimate power to put the pressure on the organization to say, hey, this is our money, and this is what we want done. Because when I spoke to the former prior state secretary, I said, listen, on your resume, you want to say that you actually helped the island. So I would not imagine that the current state secretary would want to hear that a lot of this money is leaving the island to Chinese companies. I almost guarantee that, especially with the party that they come from. So I think the next step would be Prime Minister, State Secretary, bring this topic up, because it has happened in the past where the State Secretary said we're going to take this money out of the trust fund and apply it elsewhere and execute a particular project, for example. So it's not going to fall under these particular rules. So I don't believe, I think everything is negotiable, everything. So the next step for me should be meeting Prime Minister, State Secretary, and say, hey, we have this limited funds left. How much impact can we make? If we could reduce costs in these areas, if we could split up the parcels, if we could secure that the majority of these funds goes to the local companies that can get a job done, I'm pretty sure it's a win-win-win for all involved. So that would be my my advice to the committee. I'm not part of the committee either. That'll be my advice to the committee, that we somehow transfer this over to a CC or closed door meeting or a letter, and really get the state secretary involved to be able to make good use of the last bit of funds. And I'll say this, I have worked with the NRPB and we've done great work together, but we've also had battles. So great work and battles. And I've also had battles with the World Bank, where I had to fight to get projects to fit us. Because I've told them before, this is your project that you want to set up, but this does not fit, it's not fit for purpose. The purpose is St. Martin. That'll be all, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, MP Irian, for your contribution to the discussion. I want to remind, especially the members of Parliament, as well as, in fact, everyone following this meeting and the presenters here with us, that based on the discussion that we had in looking at the petition, so this committee, the previous discussion, we already have questions for the government of St. Martin, which include the part about the involvement of the Dutch government's / state secretary. So this meeting is only going to add to those questions for one and establish the urgency of the discussion. I think a little a very short historic throwback is necessary, and my reason for feeling so strongly about this topic. We will recall that accepting this particular trust fund from the Dutch government led to a fall of the St. Martin government back then. That's a fact. The agreement with the Netherlands and the World Bank is based on an administrative agreement. From day one, I have asked all players, those of the Dutch government, those of the St. Martin governments, the following. On the last page of the administrative agreement that governs the management of the trust fund, it is stated, after, of course, the annexes to the administrative agreement. But here is where I have not been able to get the answer as to how this part is carried out by no one. And it states, the following two principles will be observed. One, value for money. Local labor will be used to the greatest possible extent and within the framework of the procurement regulations of the bank, attention will be given to opportunities for local companies to take part in the implementation. And then it continues, maximizing finance for development. A variety of financial instruments will be reviewed in order to see which is the most appropriate for the implementing programs. But it's the first bullet point that I have been asking, where is it stated how we can get that accomplished, where labor is concerned, local labor and local companies. So I think our direction to the or directive to the Dutch government / state secretary would be that with this information, this particular clause in the administrative agreement is actually being not only circumvented, but not taken into account. Point one. Secondly, the current geopolitical developments, what do they mean for the process that we have seen until now, which is that anyone, any place in the world, from any country in the world, could take part in construction taking place on this little island of St. Martin. Yes, we have always maintained, and as far as we are responsible for friendly neighbor type principles, but there is a lot happening with companies, including those who have contractors from countries which are in the midst of these geopolitical developments. What does that say to the kingdom, the Dutch kingdom, and the Minister for Foreign Affairs of the kingdom? If there are just two ministers, in fact there are three, responsible that are actually kingdom ministers, it would be the one for defense, it would be the one for justice because of the nationality and foreign affairs. And I say this to say that according to me, they have accountability to give to all countries within the kingdom. And thirdly, the point that I mentioned in response to MP Iran about where do we go from here, the urgency of this matter at hand, and what does the statement / the release by the NRPB with respect to the disqualification of companies or a company that had already won or been granted or been given or been told they will have the bid. What does that mean for the other projects? Questions that you yourself have posed earlier as well. So the again, I want to thank the members of the committee and the other members of Parliament who are part of this discussion. I want to thank the presenters here for bringing your petition and explaining your petition, and a summary of this meeting shall be made and shared with the members of the committee in order for us to decide the first step to be taken. Which is, as many have stated, and with which I agree, that actually it is the government / the responsible ministers who need to come and inform this committee and give answers to the questions which the committee has, as well as which has been posed to the committee. And then another matter for consideration by the committee is also maybe to get some type of a independent review of this particular matter here, Dutch taxpayers' funding, which have been put for St. Martin, but again, based on clear principles. And the administrative agreement also talk about such other things like technical assistance to assist which persons might be able to hold a function and need to be brought up to that level, that also be done, so that when whosoever moves away, we are not left back to where we started, but rather we would have given the opportunity to persons to, to be up to this, whatever standard for whichever position that might have been stipulated by the parties involved with this. And then before I give the two other members to make either maybe brief remarks, questions, whatever it is they're coming with, it's also important to note that we have the opportunity as members of parliament also to bring this matter to our colleagues within the kingdom, especially those of the Netherlands, because they always ask about this particular project and their taxpayers' money, how it is being spent. And looking at it from this angle today is something that we should continue to bring to their attention. I now see where MP York is requesting the floor, who I'll give the floor at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, just for clarification's sake, after what you just said, it sounded like you were closing the meeting. So my question is, separate from the questions that will be summed up to be sent to the Prime Minister or whomever, there were a handful of questions posed to the gentleman as well. So I was wondering, are those questions going to be answered prior to the meeting being closed? Because they were I think they are very important for any subsequent meeting that's to be held with any other stakeholder. And as well, I didn't get, there was one question from my person posed to your person, pertaining to how will we be moving forward, and will we be doing anything different than we have done in the past? Because I remember in one of my very first meetings here in Parliament, I think it was not even an official meeting, it was during orientation. There was something that yourself was working on, being that things coming from Parliament towards the government to bear more teeth. I think this is indicative of something that will be necessary for, seeing that I don't think there will be any question that we'll be posing to the Prime Minister, NRPB, that we haven't, my person here on the floor of Parliament hasn't posed already. So hence my question for what will we be doing differently moving forward, and if I can get the few answers from the gentleman on the questions posed. Thank you.
Thank you, MP York. Before I give MP La Cruz the floor, let me briefly respond to your person. The last set of questions, one, that came from the committee have not yet been sent to the government, the ministers. That's one. Secondly, of course, members of parliament can always, and they have, you have sent individual questions. However, this committee has a process. The process is to hear petitions, ask questions, and then we decide where do we go with the report? Do we send it to another committee of parliament or to parliament itself for decision-making. That's what happened when something is in the trajectory of especially the petition committee, which is bound by timelines, etc., when answers should be given to persons who present petitions to the parliament and to the government as well. But that's another issue. So that is where answers from the government, one, and a report from this committee that needs to say, where do we go with this? Does it go to then parliament for a decision-making by parliament? Yes, I'm gonna get to the answers from them, but I wanted to clear that part in terms of what the committee does, what do we do after this, as per the question of MP York. And now I look, MP York needs to, MP York, your comment, please.
Just to keep it short, thank you for the explanation about the trajectory of the committee, but that trajectory has how it has always been. My question was more what we will be doing differently. Reason being, the beginning, it was referred a lot to the process of the committee. That process started prior to the contracts being signed, right? And now, thankfully, we're finally here, and now we're continuing the process, but I'm wary of the length of the process and the yellow tape of the process, and when we will be actually getting to some actionable points. So that was the reason for my question. Not to go against anything you just said, I totally understand that is how it's always done.
You, MP.
But the question is what we'll be doing differently. Thank you.
Yeah, MP, you know, yeah, I hear your question. Let me say I agree with the urgency of the matter, which I stated before myself. However, as Parliament, we have to follow the processes available to Parliament. I mean, we can't go stand up with placards by the government building. You know what I'm saying? So, but we'll follow the process, and I agree with the urgency of this particular matter. I've stressed it over and over myself, but doing things differently, we got one. If we are doing it as individual members of parliament, there's a trajectory for that in terms of questions. If we're doing it as a committee as well, and particularly the Committee of Petitions. We have, it's one of the most important committees of Parliament, and members of the public just can't put something here and say, well, this is a petition. You need to follow a certain format in order for the matter to be dealt with and handled. I was going, MP La Cruz. Before I go to the gentleman and ask about the questions posed by members of Parliament. MP La Cruz.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. And just coming back to something that you mentioned, that the report would be sent to the members of the committee.
Yeah.
But seeing that I am not a member of the committee, would it still be possible that it is shared with all those that were present to this meeting, just to keep up? And if not, then how? Because then it makes not much sense. Also seeing that I, previously in the budget debate already discussed all of this. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP La Cruz, for your question. And your question is what I need to ponder on in terms of how. How do we, what can we do in order to keep Parliament informed? Because it would be actually going to the members of the committee, the report, because I'm looking at a draft report to get an input back. But I'll take your question into consideration as to what about other members may be given some input, especially those who are here today. So I need to figure out how I deal with that going forward. MP La Cruz.
Seeing that this is the only committee that I am not part of, kind of unfortunate. Okay.
I told you guys about the Committee of Petitions, and it's again, I believe in the right of citizens to formally make use of the petition possibility to Parliament, because it's about, as the regulations say, the execution of a particular task by government. That's what we as a committee are called to question based on petitions presented by members of the public. So I've had MP La Cruz, and now, gentlemen, you have heard many comments and several questions directed to some of you. How would you like to proceed? Although I must state that I am going to have to shortly maybe adjourn this meeting, and we would not be able to continue with this particular meeting today. because there's some traveling taking place actually this afternoon by several, including myself, and this committee only consists of 5 persons. So if 3 are not here, we do have an acting chair, but the acting chair is traveling as well, according to me. And I look for a nod by the, yes, she is. Okay, so that has been confirmed. So gentlemen, your ideas about responding to questions posed directly to you. You can't answer for the government, but those posed directly to you, would you like to, of course, would you need time? Let me start with that question. Would you need time to respond to these questions? Then I would know what to do. I have a... You have some answers to give now. And I see MP York, you were requesting the floor? No. Oh, it's okay. Okay. Okay, but gentlemen, you need to, those that you can give, you need to give them like, quick and short, and then I would ensure with you how we will get the other answers from you for the members of parliament. So let's start with what you got and what you can respond to. So Mr. Witteveen, I give you the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm really good at short, so let me start with the questions I can answer before I continue with my colleagues at the table. For MP La Cruz, you asked a direct question, how many locals do you have in service? Windward Roads, I can answer for us, we have roughly a little under 100 employees, of which minimum 85 are local, and they all get paid on time, absolutely. How many? Yeah, that was it. For the question about capacity, last October, I think we were waiting to get contracts from the World Bank. We're actually counting on getting some more work from there to keep our people at work. So, yes, we had all the capacity to take on these projects, absolutely. And for another question, we heard, why did we not write into all the projects? Some of them, we still could reach the requirements, but by World Bank rules, if you tender for a project, but after the tender you win, but you cannot fulfill the contract which they want to give to you, you're not allowed to tender for 5 to 7 years with these projects. So if you go for 2, but you cannot handle 2, you cannot do that. So you can only go for 1 to secure your future. Do I have anything else I can answer really short? We also do traineeships. Yes, we prefer to get local people on board before we get anybody from Holland or anywhere else abroad. We always look at local people first. Also, young professionals that went to study in Holland, we look first if we get people, and MP York can verify that. We can find people in Holland from St. Maarten, we're educated to get them back. That's what we prefer to do before we get anybody else. Besides employees, local employees, we also work with a lot of local companies, like Leroy Le Pen looks a lot with us, and multiple companies that with local people working for them, paying their taxes, feeding their families. So we're really involved in the community. That's the answers I can give really short right now. I don't know if you guys want to... Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Witteveen. Any other member of the panel who can address briefly questions posed by members of Parliament? We're going to get...
The company, the question from La Cruz, how many people or locals we employ? I would say 7 to 8 are born in St. Maarten, 7 to 8 are either from Curaçao, live there their entire lives, have kids here, you know, and 2 of them born somewhere else, but moved over here when they're 1 year old, grew up here, got kids here and whatnot, you know, and yeah, so the vast majority are locals, and yeah, 3 born to be here, Surinamese, an Argentinian, a French, Polish, and 2 Dutch, and I would say that 1 Dutch is more local than a Dutch, so that can't say much about that. Let's see other questions we had. You had a question how many people you had to send home. Well, honestly, when we were in the hiring phase, trying to find people, when we saw that these new tenders were coming up, we knew they were coming up, so we were getting prepared. But when we saw the requirements, we stopped hiring. So that prevented us from making a mistake to have too many people. Yeah, Mr. York asked a question about the consultancy table. That is just a standard table. So basically, people from the World Bank will look at that and say, okay, this much points, this much. Every project, the points is different, but they use that as a starting point for what is the possible points you could put in there. And if there's one for construction, I don't think so.
Yeah.
There's one? No.
Mostly similar.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I think for now that's it. If you have. Oh, the training sessions, if we do that. We're a small company. If we get a local, like right now, we have a local kid, 17, 18 years old. He came by us to internship, and he was doing very well. And we asked him if he can stay on, and we're teaching him how to do drafting, and he's doing a lot of coding work for us. So yeah, if we get someone, it's very difficult to get locals, and it's not a joke. If you get a local to go to Holland, it's very difficult for them to come back. I have a list of 3 or 4 local engineers in Holland. Yeah, I could send them messages, but no thanks, I'm happy right now. It's very difficult, it's a challenge. Okay, Hans?
After signing a contract, how soon do you need to start? That is depending on procurement and project engineering, but mostly that is within 4 to 8 weeks. You need to start with a project. Yeah. Then concerning how much people we have fixed on the payroll, it is around 40. That is the core we have within the company, and we hire and we work a lot with local small labor contractors. You need to think between the 15 and 20 companies we work with, especially when we were very busy with the home project and the school project. And then you have to think that they bring 6 to 8 people per company to the projects. So that is a substantial amount of families that have been working on the project for NRPB. Sending in a complaint to NRPB, yes, we did. That was basically after the bidding of the fire and ambulance extension of that building and renovation. And then you come in a world that is hard to believe. Local, they are not allowed to respond, but that come all the way down from Washington, from their lawyers who respond to our letters. And you come to a point that you have to decide, do we now go to court or do we leave it as it is? That is the cooperation with NRPB. What else do we have? That's about it, huh? Okay.
Mr. Lapé, you have something to add as well?
Well, I've been working close with Winter Roads for many, many years. I even did big projects with Winter Roads. I did the resurfacing on the airport in 2013, where I had about over 25 truckers, heavy equipment operators working under me. So you can imagine of having all those truckers, heavy equipment workers working under you. So we get to feed a lot of families, you know. So Winter Roads has always been a company that I work close with. We did a lot of big projects together, and they always include locals. Is we did it, you know. Wasn't no companies from away. Is we did it, and I find it unfortunate that they have to bring in people from away to do these projects when we can do it ourselves here. That's basically what I have to say for now.
Thank you, all of you gentlemen, for responding to questions posed here. The members of Parliament, there are at least 3 action points as a result from this meeting, what we have heard and the presentations made. And I think the most urgent one is to get the Prime Minister and any other minister responsible for the NRPB projects. Of course, we know the NRPB and the structure, that's the Prime Minister, but then you might have other relevant ministers based on the projects that are involved. That's one thing. That's going to be the first. The questions are going to go to the government questions we heard today, as well as those posed in the meeting of this committee of February, as well as requesting an appearance by the relevant ministers, and based on their reaction, this could either be open or closed door. The possibility for asking for a sort of an independent review by one of our organizations here in terms of this entire matter. And then thirdly, which is more long-term, because we're not going to be seeing our Dutch counterparts until September now, and I'm talking specifically IPCO consultations, but I think that kind of lobbying and bringing them up to speed with some of the issues that we're facing with their funds, for which of course we are very grateful. However, clearly there are some issues where it pertains to the economic sustainability of St. Martin. So for now, this particular meeting of the committee is going to be closed, because I want to be able to prepare the report. If we leave it pending, that would mean we can only get to a report of the committee when we close the meeting. So I am going to close this meeting, and if necessary, gentlemen, we will be inviting you back, all in the trajectory of this committee coming to some final decision as to where we go with the topic. Sorry, that you have brought here to Parliament. So with that, again, I want to thank you. I want to thank all members of Parliament and members of the committee for your participation in this meeting. You will be hearing from us as members, one, of the committee, secondly, as members of Parliament regarding this issue, because clearly it's a concern for everyone. So thank you all once again, and I hereby close this meeting of the Committee for Petitions of the Parliament of St. Martin. Meeting closed.